Maybe it's the commercialism or because I've spent the better part of my adult life alone. But last year was different. Last year, I met Laura. It started the way most connections do these days. Late nights scrolling through a dating app while half watching some forgettable show. Her profile was simple: love books, wine, and late-night conversations. Looking for someone real. Her picture showed her sitting in a cozy cafe, a cup of coffee in hand, eyes that seemed to hold secrets. I messaged her on a whim. "What's your favorite late-night conversation topic?" She replied instantly. "The things we think we see in the dark." It was odd, intriguing. We chatted that night until 3 a.m., and every night after. She had this way of making the mundane feel fascinating. We talked about ghost stories, childhood memories, and irrational fears. By February 1st, we'd agreed to meet in person for Valentine's Day. She chose the location, an old restaurant called the Crimson Ivy. I'd never heard of it, but she swore it had the best wine selection in town. I Googled it and found nothing. When I mentioned that, she just said, "It's old. Some places don't exist online." The night of the 14th came, and I drove to the address she texted me. It was on the outskirts of town, past streets I knew, into an area where GPS glitched. I was about to turn around when I saw it. A 2-story brick building covered in vines that looked black in the moonlight. A dimly lit sign read, "The Crimson Ivy." Inside, the restaurant was almost empty. A waiter in a stiff uniform guided me to a table near the back where Laura was waiting. She looked even better in person. Pale skin, dark hair, those secret-keeping eyes. "You made it," she said with a smile. "Barely," I laughed. "This place is impossible to find." "The best places usually are," she said, tilting her head. The waiter brought wine without us ordering. It was deep red and tasted expensive. The conversation flowed like always, though something about the place unsettled me. The wallpaper had a pattern that seemed to move if I looked too long. The other diners sat too still, their eyes fixed on plates of food they never seemed to eat. "Bathroom break," I said eventually, standing. Laura gave a small nod. As I walked away, I felt the weight of every other diner's gaze shift toward me. I quickened my pace. The bathroom was down a narrow hallway. Inside, the mirror was old and foggy. As I washed my hands, the lights flickered. For a second, the reflection behind me shifted. Laura was there, standing too close. Her eyes were solid black. I spun around. No one was there. Back at the table, Laura was sipping her wine casually. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. "You look pale," she said, voice soft. "Want to go for a walk?" Outside, the air was crisp. We walked along a narrow path that led behind the restaurant. I tried to shake the unease, but the silence pressed down on me. The restaurant's lights disappeared behind the thick vines, leaving us in darkness. "I like you," Laura said suddenly. "I like you too," I answered. She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "It's rare," she continued, "to find someone real." I smiled, but something about her words stuck with me. "Laura, how did you find that restaurant?" "It finds the right people," she said simply. My heart stuttered. "What does that mean?" She squeezed my hand tighter. "It means we're exactly where we need to be." Something rustled in the darkness. I turned my head and saw figures emerging from the shadows. The diners from inside. They walked in slow, synchronized steps, their eyes black and reflective. I yanked my hand away and ran. The path twisted, disorienting. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. I heard footsteps behind me, closing in. The breath in my lungs turned sharp and cold. The vines along the path thickened, curling like grasping fingers. Suddenly, I was back in my car. I scrambled for the keys, my hands slick with sweat. As the engine roared to life, I saw Laura standing at the edge of the trees. Her head tilted, eyes black voids. She raised one hand and mouthed words I couldn't hear. I didn't stop driving until I reached my apartment. I locked the door and collapsed on the couch. My phone buzzed. A message from Laura. "Miss you already? Can't wait until next Valentine's Day." The next morning, I searched for the crimson ivy again. Still nothing. I drove back to the location. The building was gone, replaced by an empty lot filled with brittle, blackened vines. Now, as February 14th approaches again, I feel it, the pull. I dream of those black eyes, that whispering voice, and sometimes when I pass a mirror, I see her standing behind me, waiting. Valentine's Day always seemed like just another overhyped holiday to me, until the year I learned how deeply unsettling it could become. It started with a card, just a simple unmarked envelope sitting on my desk at work on the morning of February 13th. I was the first one in that day, as usual, and there it was, cream-colored, sealed, with my name scrawled across the front in uneven handwriting. I opened it out of curiosity. Inside was a card with an old-fashioned design, roses entwined with thorns, and the words, "To my forever Valentine," embossed in faded gold. No signature, just a message written in the same shaky hand. "I'm watching you," I chuckled nervously. Must be some kind of prank. I assumed one of my coworkers was laughing, but the joke didn't sit right. I worked in an accounting office where the closest thing to humor was a spreadsheet meme. I decided to brush it off and went about my day. But then came the phone call. That night, as I was microwaving leftovers in my apartment, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, assuming it might be a telemarketer. "Hello?" Silence. Then a faint whisper, "I'm watching you." My heart skidded. I looked toward my living room window instinctively. My apartment was on the 5th floor. There was no way someone could be outside, but I still felt exposed. I hung up and tried to shake it off as another prank. The next morning was Valentine's Day. At work, another card waited for me. The same type of envelope, same handwriting. "Tonight's the night. I can't wait to see you." I reported it to HR. They promised to look into it and offered to have security walk me to my car. I accepted, but the guard, a tired-looking man in his 60s, just muttered something about kids playing pranks. That evening, I double-checked my locks and closed the curtains. I tried watching TV, but every sound from the hallway made me jump. Around 10:30, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered with a shaky voice. "Who is this?" The voice whispered back, softer this time. "Look outside." My chest tightened. I didn't want to obey, but some dreadful curiosity pulled me to the window. The street below was empty, except for a figure standing directly across from my building. Tall. Still. Looking up. I couldn't make out a face, but I saw a glint of something metallic. A knife? A phone? The figure lifted its free hand and waved. I yanked the curtain shut and backed away. My heart hammered so loudly I swore the whole building could hear it. I called the police. An officer arrived 20 minutes later. By then, the figure was gone. The cop was kind but skeptical. "Valentine's Day prank," he said. "People get weird this time of year." He left after a cursory check of the perimeter. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, exhausted and anxious, I found another card slipped under my apartment door. "You looked beautiful last night." That was it. I packed a bag and went to stay at a friend's place across town. 2 days later, the police called me. "Is this Mr. Langley?" the officer asked. "Yes," I said. "We need you to come down to the station." When I arrived, they showed me security footage from my apartment building's stairwell. On Valentine's Day night, just after I hung up with the police, a figure appeared in the footage. A man in a dark hoodie who rode the elevator to my floor. He walked to my apartment and stood outside my door for nearly an hour. Then he knelt and slid the card underneath. The camera caught one clear frame of his face when he turned to leave. I recognized it instantly. It was Mark, a quiet coworker from the accounting department. He never spoke to me beyond polite nods. The police arrested him that night. In his apartment, they found dozens of photos of me, at work, at the grocery store, and even some through my apartment window. They also found a box of unused Valentine's Day cards identical to the ones I'd received. Mark never explained why he did it. The police said that was common with stalkers. He just watched. It's been a year since that night. I moved across the city, changed my phone number, and installed security cameras. But every Valentine's Day, I still close the curtains early, just in case someone new is watching. I never liked Valentine's Day. Not because of some bitter heartbreak or cynical worldview, I just never understood the fuss. Hearts, chocolates, roses, all symbols of affection manufactured by marketers to make you spend more money. Still, this year, I decided to make an exception. For Sarah was different. We met through an old friend last summer, and for reasons beyond my comprehension, she liked me. We clicked. Not in some over-the-top romantic comedy way, but in a comfortable, familiar sense. She laughed at my dry jokes, and I found myself wanting to share stories with her. So when February rolled around, I caved to the holiday pressure. I ordered a custom card online, a vintage-style postcard with a simple, embossed message. "Sarah, be my Valentine, Mike. Simple, honest, me." I dropped it in the mailbox on February 10th, figuring it would arrive just in time. I never mentioned it to her. I wanted it to be a surprise. That night, I texted her, "Hey, feel like a movie night this weekend?" "Sure. How about Saturday? Your place or mine?" "Mine. I'll pick a good one. Popcorn guaranteed." "Deal. Can I bring chocolate hearts?" "Ugh. Fine, but no heart-shaped balloons." "Haha. Deal." It was ordinary, comfortable, and maybe that was why the next part rattled me so deeply. The next morning, I stepped out to get my mail. In the stack of bills and flyers was a small cream-colored envelope. No return address. My name was scrawled across the front in familiar handwriting. Sarah's handwriting. I smiled, assuming she'd sent a Valentine's Day card in response to mine. But when I opened it, my heart stopped. "Mike, be my Valentine, Sarah." The exact phrasing I'd written on my card. Identical vintage style, same embossing. Weird coincidence, right? I texted her. "Got your card? Cute touch, copying my style." She responded almost immediately. "What card?" "The Valentine you sent me. Just got it." "I didn't send you anything. Are you sure?" My stomach tightened. I sent her a picture of the card. 3 dots appeared on the screen. Then, "That's really weird," I swear I didn't send that. I stared at the card again, running my fingers over the textured surface. The handwriting was perfect. Hers, down to the looping tail on her Y and the little curl she always added to the S in her name. Maybe someone was messing with me, but who would go to such lengths for Valentine's prank? I let it go. We joked about my secret admirer and moved on. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Saturday arrived. Sarah came over with chocolates and we watched a forgettable rom-com while making fun of the characters. I tried not to think about the card. Halfway through the movie, she leaned into me and said, "By the way, I got your Valentine." "You did? It arrived?" "Yesterday," she said, smiling. It was sweet, simple and honest. You. I felt a rush of relief. Good, I'm glad. She hesitated. "But, Mike, did you write something on the back?" "No." She pulled out her phone, scrolled, and showed me a picture of the card. The back had a faint, scribbled message in pencil. "Don't let him in." We stared at the words in silence. My apartment suddenly felt colder. "I swear I didn't write that," I said. She believed me. We both tried to laugh it off as some sick joke, but Sarah stayed the night and I didn't sleep. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 6:13 a.m. Unknown number. I groggily answered. "Hello?" A man's voice, low and whispery. "Did you like my Valentine, Mike?" I sat up, my heart racing. Who the hell is this? The line went dead. Sarah woke up to me pacing the room. I told her everything. She called the police. An officer came by, took our statements, and advised us to stay vigilant. "Valentine's Day attracts weirdos sometimes," he said. We went to Sarah's place for safety. She lived in a high-rise with good security. That night, we double-checked the locks and tried to sleep. At 2:43 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text, no number displayed. I'm already inside. We froze. Sarah grabbed my arm. We scanned the apartment with kitchen knives in hand. Nothing. Every window is locked, door bolted. Then I saw it. Her Valentine's card was back on the kitchen table. We had left it at my place. On the back, beneath the warning, a new line had been added. Too late. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. The door to the bedroom was ajar. Slowly, it creaked open. A man stood there, pale, gaunt, eyes reflecting the dim light. He smiled, holding a torn piece of a vintage Valentine's card. "I delivered it myself," he whispered. I lunged at him. He darted back. In the chaos that followed, he slashed my arm with something sharp before diving out the window, 8 floors up. The police found nobody below. Just a torn scrap of paper caught in the bushes. Don't let him in. Sarah moved away a week later. I changed my locks, my number, everything. But every year on February 14th, a familiar card arrives in my mailbox. Sarah, be my Valentine, Mike. I never sent another one, and I never opened my door on Valentine's Day. Because last year the card had a new message. I'm inside again.